Once again, please keep your questions or comments in context of the lesson because we have limited time. We're going to pick up at verse 17 of Genesis chapter 4. The Bible says here we're talking about Cain. We knew what happened to Cain, right? Who did Cain kill? That's exactly right. And God cursed him after that. Then it says here, and Cain knew his wife. So Cain found a wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehirijal, and Mahai begot Methuselah, and Methuselah begot Lamech. Now let's freeze right now. Do we know anything about Enoch? I'm just going to challenge you to hold on as we go further into Genesis. You know, God sent Cain away for a reason. And Enoch is going to do some things. You guys are going to see, and we're going to say, wow, this goes all the way back to here. Make sense? Verse 19, and Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of the one was Adath, and the name of the other Zillah. Why do you think it's important that we take time to read these genealogies? Yes, Dan. Very, very good. I found out I did a deep study in First Samuel one time. And I was like, wait a minute, some of these names sound familiar. And you go back, just like Danny said, these names come up. I'm going to submit 3 reasons why. Number one, their name may come up in further chapters or lessons. You can go back and look and say, okay, so he was his son, he was his granddaddy or whatever. And also, you can look up to see what these names mean. And I'll come right to you, Daryl. Come up with what these names mean, because many times the names reveal something that what the chapter is about. And the second one, also, when you go through a genealogy, you can do what? Yeah, I'm sorry, Sister Van Cole. You will be amazed who's in whose genealogy. Who in here knows who Rahab is? Nobody? Sister Van Cole again. Who is Rahab, Sister Van Cole, real quick? That's right, the harlot definition of Israel. Did you know she was in Christ's genealogy? That's powerful. Keep in mind, she was not Jewish. She was not an Israelite. But she's in Christ's genealogy. That's what studying. They can be boring to read, but boy, don't skip over them names. Look them up. Okay? Bible continues in verse 20. And Adabar Jabal, he was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all of such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal Cain, and instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. Last verse, verse 24. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. 2 points I want to bring out about this. First of all, they were starting to marry. It wasn't one man for one woman, was it? No, where did that come from? Since we started reading from the beginning, it was Adam and Eve, one man, one woman. Where does multiplicity of wives come from all of a sudden? See how man's will and his flesh can ease right on in? And if you don't check it when it is, it can spread. And notice it's spreading here with Cain's clan. Another point I want you to take hold of, they were aware of what God said to Cain. Because they said, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, remember that's what God said to those who try to kill Cain? It says, truly Lamach 70 and sevenfold. So if they knew so, isn't it amazing how sometimes we can pick and choose what we're going to obey based upon what God said as opposed to obeying all of it? You know, me and my wife rushed the Bible study today. We made a quick pit stop at Burger King. You know what Burger King's slogan is? Have it your way. You think that applies to the Bible? Absolutely not. It's God's way. Now, God gives you the free will to choose whatever you're going to choose. But whatever you choose, there's always a consequence. If you're going to choose to disobey Him, then don't get upset at the consequences. If you're going to choose to obey Him, then enjoy the blessings. Questions, comments, concerns, confusion. Okay. Bible continues, verse 25. And Adam knew his wife again. So before this, they had who? Cain and Abel. And Cain killed his brother Abel, right? Now let's see this one. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. Look at this. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Now, you could almost preach a sermon after that, showing the compassion and empathy of God. You see what that said? It said, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. What's real particular in this verse? Something stands out. I'm not just when it says it's talking about the seed. Seth was the godly line. Who was said to be the godly line before Seth died, though? Abel, according to this. But this is Seth is considered, because you're going to see as we read further where it's going to talk about the seed, the godly line. That's talking about the line that came through Seth. Seth was the godly line. Bible continues in verse 26, the last verse of chapter 4. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and called his name Enos. That began men to call upon the name of the Lord. See that little extra? Don't skip over that little extra. Because of Seth's line, men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Isn't that interesting what we saw? That they had multiple wives that were slipping away. But now men are starting to call upon the name of the Lord. Is that a good thing? That's another thing about genealogies. You can read through and see when they followed God, when they broke away, and who they broke away under, and then who brought them back. Who was the leadership, the real leader that brought them back. You can see that all through the Bible. Questions, comments before we get into chapter 5? Yes, Daryl. Did I call you before, Daryl? I'm so sorry. Yeah, absolutely. To those on Zoom, if you didn't hear Brother Daryl said another good reason to study genealogies, it helps to fill in the gaps. Who in here has ever been to a family reunion? Pretty much all of us, right? Have you ever go there and you sit there and you're like, who are you? I'm so and so. You're who's son so and so? Oh, you're my cousin. Then you start talking, filling in those gaps. The same way here. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you, Brother Darrell. Chapter 5. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In that day that God created man in the likeness of God, made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam called them Adam in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness, and after his image, and called his name Seth. What do you pull from that? Notice you're constantly hearing in his image. In his image. What is that talking about? Is that saying Seth looked like Adam? Nothing to do with that. What is that talking about? What does that in his image mean? You see, name and image came with power. That's why God is deliberately calling out Seth. That's going to be the godly line. I think I mentioned this before many weeks ago, but I liken it to sometime in the military. In the military, or better yet, in the Olympics. You ever see the opening ceremony to the Olympics? They always pick one particular athlete to be up front. In Paris, they brought him down in boats. What was then for the United States? It was LeBron James. But what was LeBron James holding high? Anybody remember? The flag of what though? The United States. The power and the authority of the United States was on display. Every nation did that. That was the image. That's where the same word comes from. When God made man in his image, notice how when you go keep it in context, he immediately allowed man to name all the animals. And he said, you have authority over them. That's the context. People say, well, it's mind, body, and soul. That sounds cute, but it's not in context. Some people say, well, it's because we have three main body parts. We have the head, then the middle part, and the feet. Sounds cute, but that's not the context. The context is authority. And people say, well, why? It's not about a power trip. No, it's not about a power. It's about responsibility. You wonder why the relationship between a husband and a wife is to represent the church? Because the husband has an incredible responsibility. It's not about the power trip, well, I'm in charge. But what are you doing? It's the responsibility. And God has put that on headship. Does that make sense? That's a whole nother lesson. Question? That was the original. No. He was in command of the animals. Well, let me tell the people on Zoom what you asked. Sister Lopez, to those on Zoom, said, did God give give Adam the authority just to name the animals or to be over the animals? And the answer is to be over the animals. And that wasn't just Adam, that was mankind. The word refers to mankind. Responsibility. The second question was, what kind of power did Adam have over them? Responsibility. We have a responsibility to care for animals, and God has also given us the authority we can slay and eat, and then pray, and then eat of the meat. But that's the responsibility that He gave us over animals. This also ties into when it was allowed in the Old Testament, specific animal sacrifices. Remember when Jesus went into the temple and turned the tables over and said, you've made my Father's house, should have been a house of prayer, a den of thieves. They were, if you notice what they were doing, they were taking certain animals, marking up the prices and everything. That wasn't the responsibility they were given. And that's one of the first times you see Jesus turning over tables and actually showing righteous indignation. That was what you call abuse of power. Make sense? Okay. Thank you for the question, Sister Lopez. Anybody else? And if I miss you, please keep your hand up. I'm not missing you on purpose. Except when I miss Daryl, that was purpose. But thank you all for your questions. We're in chapter 5. We're going to pick up at verse 4. In the days of Adam, after he had begotten Seth, were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Have you ever wondered when you read in the Old Testament how people live so long? Imagine it says here that in verse 5 and verse 4, the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years. Imagine living 800 years. I heard a guy on the radio. I listened to Moody Broadcasting Center, and he said it was because, the fall hasn't happened yet. And I said, what Bible does he read? This is well after Adam and Eve sinned. So that wasn't true. Why do you think? And I'm not talking opinion, just make sure you have biblical evidence. Why do you think man could live? I'm gonna give you a clue. Remember when the 12 spies went in to seek out the promised land? What did they bring back other than the majority of them brought back bad news? 2 brought back good news. But what else did they bring? Daryl, you got your hand up. Mm-hmm. And notice it took 2 men to carry what? Grapes. When's the last time you went to Publix and called one of your brothers to help you bring these grapes into your house? A guy broke this down for me. He said the land was so much pure in those days, and the closer and closer you come to where we are now, the land has been polluted. Many of the soil they have to root up and put more soil down. But it enhanced their lifestyle very much when it came to health. Just think of all the stuff we have now that you don't think God provided a way naturally for us to survive? We've just chosen to choose Doritos over a nice fresh pineapple that's this big. The reason why I can vouch for this, when I was in the jungles of Okinawa, there were certain areas where they wouldn't let man, farm or anything. It was untouched land. To this day, I have never seen bananas and fruits that big just out there. They let us light it up too, and they were good. I was like, man, I thought back to the Bible. Can you imagine toward the beginning how fresh this fruit must have been? Now, that's just a possibility, but I'm saying it ties in. Also, going back to today, if you meet your first cousin, are you going to marry and have kids with your first cousin? No. Because what could possibly happen? The Bible says you can have a lot of, not the Bible, but doctors say you can have a lot of birth defects, and that's been proven. But now, when Cain found a wife, there was only so many people on earth that time, so what's the likelihood of her being somehow directly related to? Mm-hmm. But why didn't it mention the kids had some birth defects? Because the blood was so pure. Isn't that beautiful? So pure. Because God didn't say, go ahead, grab one of your cousins, and I'll make sure there's no birth defects. That's not mentioned in the Bible anywhere. When they married early in those days, it was intermarriage. But the bloodlines were so pure, so beautiful. Give man enough time, he'll pollute almost anything. Questions, comments? Bible continues, verse 5. And all the days that Adam lived, 930 years, and he died. Verse 6. And Seth lived 105 years and begot Enos. And Seth lived after he begot Enos 807 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enos lived 90 years and begot Cain. And Enos lived after he begot Cain 850 years, and he begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. And Cain lived 70 years and begot Mahalalel. And Cain lived after he begot Mahalalel 840 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Why are we going over all this? Why is all this listed? In other words, how can this help us? Quiet, I'll give you guys time to think while I get some air and stop sweating. Why is that? Yes, Sister Lopez. One more time. You said, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. All I heard was 7. Yes, it's showing their descendants. That's right. Say again, genealogy. Why is that important for us? That we're reading it today. That these people live these many, many hundreds of years. Why is that important for us to know today? What can that do for us today? What if I ever give you the clue of Lois and Eunice? That's your Jeopardy clue. Yes, JB. I said, how is it a benefit for us to know? It's all right. When you see that, we know that Seth was the what line? The godly line, right? He says that's when men started calling upon the name of the Lord. So Seth was the man that possibly changed a generation that wasn't following God. He stepped in. And the question is, we need to trace and see whether his godly line did the same thing. Why is that important to us? Do we ask that about ourselves? Have I started, or am I continuing a godly line? When I hear my mom talk about her mother and her uncles and brothers, and I realize, wow, we have a godly line to uphold. It's encouraging. I don't just follow it because they did it. I got to have my own relationship with God. But it's good to know that, okay, I was born into a family that believed in the Church of Christ. I have a responsibility to continue this on and ensure that my boys do the same thing. When you read this, that should encourage us to do that. And ask ourselves, how long will it go? How long will this family line go? Bible continues. And that the days of Canaan, verse 14, and in all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. And Mahalalel lived 65 years and begot Jered. And Mahalalel lived after he begot Jared 830 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. And Jared lived 162 years, and he begot Enoch. And Jared lived after he begot Enoch 800 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. What do we know about Methuselah? Yes, Brother David. Say again. Did you raise your hand, David? You fast. What matter of fact, what do we know? If you play any kind of Bible game, Enoch and Methuselah generally comes up. What do we know about him? Sister Vanco, hand waving way in the back. Which one was the oldest? You remember how much? It's the bonus question. How old was it? Ooh, don't help her out now. This ain't phone a friend. You're all on. That's it. Not very good. 969. What was unique about Enoch in reference to Methuselah? You still got the floor. No, we do know he did not die. God took him up into heaven with what? We'll see it later. And how did God take him on? Anybody ever see a track and field movie called Chariots of Fire? Classic movie. God took up Enoch on a chariot of fire. Can you imagine? It says he walked with God, never saw physical death, and God took him up by chariot of fire. It makes you wonder what God thought of him, don't you? Got to think, well, but it says here, and begot some, verse 30, in all the days of verse 21. And Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. The person who never saw physical death and was taken up by God birthed the man that lived the longest according to Bible time, 969. I don't think that's a coincidence. They had something to share. Verse 22, here we go. And Enoch walked with God. That's what Sister Vanco just said. After he begot Methuselah, 300 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And Methuselah lived 108, 80, and 7 years, and begot Lamech. Now, what does it mean when it says that Enoch walked with God? What does that mean? Interesting when you study the Hebrew, it gets real specific. JV. It's not a physical. Well, in a way it is, though. But go ahead. Very good. It was similar. Remember when Satan came before God, and God said, "If you consider my servant Job, said he escheweth evil, there's none like him." The same Hebrew words come from that, which means he was really obedient. Does that mean he didn't sin? No. It just means he didn't let it define him. I'll come right back to you. He was just like JV said. He walked. He generally did what God said do. He did. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. No, I didn't say that. It's just he stayed perfect in Christ. When he messed up, he prayed and he got it right. The big difference between, I tell people, look up a person like Daniel. You won't find one recorded error that he did, even one recorded sin that he did. Does that mean he didn't sin? No, that would go against the overall arching message of the Bible. It's just it didn't define him. It didn't. He got it right and continued on. You ever wonder why we have the story of David, his many trials? Starts off as 12 years old, taking out animals, guarding sheep, doing mighty things. And then becoming a man, making all these mistakes, but yet the Bible says, this is a man after my own heart. You think, really? It's not that God doesn't know that we're going to fall. Sometimes we're going to fall hard. But the thing is, when it's brought to our attention, do we get up and make it right as soon as possible? I'm reminded of my mentor, Brother Pitts. He said, it doesn't matter if you fall down 25 times. Just make sure you get up 26. So much wisdom in that. And he was a wise man. He says, you're going to fall, but if you let it keep you down, that's what Satan wants. You're down for the count. We have to get back up, no matter how bad it is. But I was comparing, to make a long story short, and then I'll come to you, Daryl. I was comparing Job with what God is saying about Enoch. When Satan came before him, Satan came before God, warning Job. And God said, have you considered Job? He is skewed with evil. He said, there's none like him in the land. Similar to what it's talking about here with Seth. Same key word. And then you know what God said? You know what Satan said? Well, he's only obeying you because of the stuff you give. So what did God do? Well, go ahead and touch his stuff. Just don't touch the body yet. And he did that. What will that think if you were in that situation? We haven't seen you in a while. Well, man, I've been trying to find a job. I can't find nothing. Many times we define who we are by our circumstances, not to whom we belong. And that can creep in very subtly. Then before you know it, it's how you respond. How you doing? Not too good. Yes, we need jobs to take care of our families. Don't let that define who you are, though, because that will keep you down. Just I liken it to, let's just say I went home, then I heard a knock at the door. Look through the peephole, I don't see a thing. It's like, what in the world? Open the door, there's 10 snakes, big old boa constrictors, and they can talk. And they're saying, hey, Mr. Nelson, we hear you're a pretty decent guy. And I'm thinking, how can you talk? They say, we just need a place to stay for a little bit. Can we come in for a while? And I said, well, y'all go ahead and come on in. They slithered around, got comfortable. Then after 2 or 3 days, they got me wrapped up, Stephanie wrapped up, and Thomas. So then what would be the question we consider? Why did we let them in the house, period? Because they're snakes. When you think that'd be a fair question? Now think about this. When we come to God, God gives us faith. And that's what's supposed to permeate us, because the Bible says, this is it that overcomes the world, even our faith. We're going to hear about that tonight. So every time we doubt or we question, like, why is this happening? We're letting a little bit of doubt and fear in. Notice I said you let it in. What does the Bible say about leaven? Little leaven, leaveneth the whole lump. Try doubt and fear. It can expand quickly, and before you know it, you're questioning even if you can do something, because you've let doubt and fear. Was that the first bell? You're questioning whether you can do something because you let doubt and fear in. Does that make sense? We got to constantly define ourselves through our faith. If you don't know how, we're going to talk about that tonight. Daryl, I don't want to forget about you this time. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Very good. To those on Zoom, Brother Darrell asked, you hear about these people in the Old Testament that lived these hundreds and hundreds of years? Were these years calculated at the same time, at the same rate that we do now? What the Bible tells us, and we're right in the book of beginnings, how was a day calculated? Sunning of the rise, the sun of the rise, rising of the sun and going down. That's how the year was calculated. So it's on. It might be a few minutes or so off because of Julian calendars, but it's still sun up and sun down. Even in Israel, today they use sun up and sun down. So technically, it's the same number of years. And bottom line, it's a long time, much longer than we do. I think I got my insurance license a while back, and they have the standard years that a man and a woman will live, and it seems to go down a couple of years every 2 or 3 years. We are unhealthy people, technically, physically. But does that answer your question, my brother? All right. Anybody else? Because we're on the downslope. Let's keep going. Verse 25, and Methuselah lived 187 years and begot Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begot Lamech 780 years and 2 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 900. Here it is, Sister Van Cole. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. That's where Sister Van Cole got that number. She's right. And Lamech lived 180 years and 2 years, and he begot a son. And he called his name, what is that? There's always a name that always jump out at you, and where the story really starts. Now we're up to Noah. You see where Noah came from? I'll come right to you, Brother Lopez. See where Noah came from is Methuselah, all of them were in the godly line. Yes, Brother Lopez. Mm-hmm. The Bible, all the Bible tells us is gives us the year. It doesn't tell us. I can't say who did what if the Bible doesn't say. The Bible doesn't say who tallied all. Somebody kept track of it. Mm-hmm. So he got it from maybe he got it directly from God. Mm-hmm. You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Brother Lopez asked who was the one on to those on Zoom, who was the one who kept record of people's ages and everything. And the Bible doesn't tell us directly. We know that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. He could have gotten it directly from God. Thank you, brother. Was that the second bell? Thank you, Brother Lopez. You hit it right on the spot. We're going to close out now, folks. Brothers, we will go back and prepare for today's worship. And we'll be right back here at 10 o'clock. Please bow with me.